safe to say you decided to retool the offensive line?
Yeah, well, we're excited to get Michael Couture. We think he's a top-rate center in this league. Bonus that he's from here. That wasn't the reason why we did it, but I think it's a bonus that he's from here and signed a 2-year contract, so we're really excited to get him.
You lost a few from your offensive line, but do you see it as being an upgrade with what you brought in?
Yeah, I mean, we had to make some choices. I think a lot of players on this team earned pay raises from the way they played last year, and we couldn't do it with everyone. We had to make choices on people. So there were a couple guys that, good for them as they got big contracts elsewhere, and they deserve them. So, but we just with the math and the salary cap and everything, we couldn't re-sign everyone. But we feel very fortunate is that we've retained a large core of guys, and they've committed to 2 years, which helps too. So we wanted to retain as many guys as we can, and then we're going to have to fill in some pieces with some young guys.
It seemed like retaining some of the talent from last year was a big priority for you guys. Like, there were a lot of extensions signed in the lead up to today.
Yeah, there was. And we got a lot done, and the majority of them are 2-year contracts, which I just bring that up because in the CFL it's not as common. And we're trying to establish some consistency and continuity around here. So we feel fortunate to get those done. Like I said, there's a whole group of guys that I think earned pay raises, and we did as many as we could, but we had to make some choices. And like I said, there's a couple guys that left today that deserved pay raises, and they got them.
Can you expand on some of those guys who deserve raise, like specifically Dominic Rhymes? I know there was a lot of talk about trade demands and things like that. Can you expand on that situation?
Yeah, that maybe got a little bit out of hand, but that's part of figuring it out. It is part of figuring out that was a guy that he was still under contract, so he wasn't going to be a free agent, but he fell into that category of someone that outplayed their contract. Some guys, sometimes they underplay, sometimes they overplay, and obviously you hope they overplay their contract, and you get in these situations. And we're trying to treat people as fairly as we can and try to make sure the salaries fit together the best they can by position, so that no one's out of whack, either too low or too high. And so we're just trying to make sure we try to create that chemistry, and part of that was Dom getting a pay raise and an extension.
And speaking of some of those guys that did leave that you couldn't quite match, James Butler obviously was a key part of this offense last year. He's getting a big raise in Hamilton. How easy is it to replace a guy like that, a running back in the CFL?
Well, it's never easy, we think. James, good player, good guys, but he was new here a couple years ago when I came here. No one knew who James Butler was, and he had to fight his way to become a CFL guy, and he did it, and good for him. But like I said, we had to pick and choose, and just the way the puzzle was fitting together, and that's part of our personnel department is you got to bring American guys up. And part of the recipe for being good in this league is to find your own American players, as many as you can, and draft well with the Canadians, because otherwise things get out of whack. And if you're trying to sign everybody else's players through free agency all the time, it's not sustainable because of the salaries. So disappointed, like I said, to lose those guys. I'm happy for them that they're wanted and they got the money that they deserve. And but yeah, we're gonna have a whole group of guys coming in, and that'll be a focal point in training camp is the running back position. That'll be a wide open competition, and look forward to it.
Speaking of salaries, just what are your thoughts on some of those numbers that have been thrown around in free agency today? The receivers, defensive linemen getting some very fat stacks.
Yeah. So one, I'm happy for players. I want players to get paid as much as they can get paid. Players have a shelf life. They only can play a certain amount of years. So I'd never get mad at a player for wanting to get paid as much as they could. In the big picture, which is part of our job here of the team, not just an individual, it's not sustainable to do that too often and have too many salaries out of whack. And so I guess we were going more with the group mentality and trying to have strength in numbers. And but I'm always happy for guys that make as much money as they can, and we got to look out for the team at the same time.
Rick, I know we're only in February, but I would imagine you kind of envisioning how your offense is going to look with all the changes, quarterback, running back, offensive line. no Brian Burnham. How do you see the offense looking right now? I know it's only February, but
Yeah, you're right. There's some very important pieces that are gone. At the same time, there's a good crew that's back. You know, the majority of the receivers with Lucky and Hatcher and Rhymes and Katoy and Scarfone, and you know, there's a whole list of people that are back. Also, Couture's new to us, but he's a guy that we think can be a really good player. Sook is still here. Most of our O-line are guys that have been here. So we are going to have to plug a few pieces in, but it's not going to be an overhaul. And you know, the QB situation, as we all saw what VA did last year. So again, it's another guy that's new to being the starter for the start of the year, but you know, a guy that played. So I think we have a lot of veteran presence over there, and I'm going to be excited to see what they do.
A couple of Western teams, especially Edmonton and Saskatchewan, made some pretty big moves. How's it feel to see your competitors splashing out?
It's tough to win in this league. It's really tough to win this league. Usually you'll find that if you have a solid year in the standings and stuff, those teams tend to have less activity, and the teams that are looking to bump up, you know, that didn't make the playoffs, are going to be the teams that are even more active. So that's part of what makes the CFL exciting from a fan point of view, is this day, free agent day, because there's player movement, gives everybody new hope, and which is good. And draft day, like I said, those are two big days for player movement. But it's tough. It's tough sledding in this league. You got to be good. You try to make as many good decisions as you can, because you know, everybody in the West is going to be good.
Coach, depth is always important. Are you still pursuing players actively in free agency, particularly guys that might be able to help you on special teams?
Yeah, we are. We definitely are spending to the cap. We're for sure doing that. So the day 2 and day 3, I think, is where you get more creative with who the guy is and how you can pay him and all those things, because we're not going to be a team that can just outbid people. So, but absolutely, we're going to keep. You know, I know Ryan Rigmaiden and Neil and Steph are. If you look at my recents on my phone, it's all with that. So we always try to bring every situation up. That's the thing I learned too, is to not say no, is to try to listen. And whoever it is comes up with an idea. We talk about it. Is it feasible? Can it work? All those things, and we'll continue to do that over the next couple days.
The other aspect, when you project your roster, you always look for internal improvement as well. Who are some of the players that you currently have on your roster that you expect to play bigger roles next year, considering the moves of obviously some of the players that left?
Yeah, I still think there's room for growth with guys that are going into their 3rd or 4th year in the CFL, the Hatchers of the world, those guys that really stepped up and keep going. There's going to be a couple of our O-linemen that I think are going to step up. We've drafted O-linemen the last couple of years that, like Packer and Zur and that crew of guys that need to grow and get an opportunity. So looking forward to see them. So we talked. I know we talked last year about the guys that went from year 1 to year 2 and saw that improvement, and so we need to see that again with a group of guys that once they get used to knowing what they're walking into playing in the CFL, that they can improve.
Do you guys have any interest in a local running back who played in Edmonton last year? Milanovic?
Yeah, absolutely. We've discussed him. Yeah, when he got released, all those guys are on the radar screen. So we'll always look into that. Like I said, the guys being local is definitely not a requirement, but I think it's a huge bonus. The more people we get around here that are from BC and from the West Coast, I think it's can do nothing but good things, and you're more likely to keep people around. So we never make a decision based on that, but I always think it's a good thing. You know, like Couture, getting him as a bonus, that it's a guy that's from here, went to BC Lions games as a kid, is proud of the whole thing. I think all that stuff's good stuff.